Hello, all. Welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. This is Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, hoggable homos to talk about something near and dear to our hearts. Of course, that being movies. We love them so much. The word is literally in our title. And this week we're coming at you a little bit different. We have been having a little bit of difficulties with YouTube. We love you, YouTube. But we're actually going live on Facebook for our review of Scoob. Zoinks! We're trying it a little differently. Hopefully it works well. If you are joining us live on Facebook, feel free to drop your comments and thoughts on that live post. We'd love to hear from you. And yeah, we're going to jump into our conversation here in just moments. But before we do, let me introduce you to my fantastic co-host. Jim Pugliapico is here with us in the virtual studio. Hey, sweetheart. Welcome to the show.
I am here. Thanks, babe. Welcome to the podcast, everybody who's watching on Facebook Live.
And we are definitely glad to have you here with us, babe. Thanks for joining. Will Lindis is here as well, coming in from Austin, Texas, still in quarantine. Will, how you doing?
Jinkies, boys. I'm here. And that's actually a good thing. You know, I've been using here as sort of like I'm here, I'm trudging through, but you know what? No, I'm here. I'm here with the two of you. I'm here with the people that we like to talk movies about. So yeah, I'm here, and that's a good thing.
It's good to be here.
Very glad that you're here. Because I'm fine, you're fine, we're fine, we're here. I think we're supposed to say we're queer. It's not quite Pride Month yet. Pride season hasn't officially kicked off, although I did get, not that you can see it in my bright lights, the new Apple Pride sports band.
Ooh.
So I'm excited about that. I also got something else cute today. Speaking of movies and franchises, you guys might appreciate this. My new little desk buddy.
Oh!
It's baby!
Brad had a baby.
I had a baby. Yeah.
Had a baby, it's a boy.
Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda.
The green baby boy.
All right. Enough dicking around. We got a movie to talk about. We are going to be reviewing Scoob, the newest Scooby-Doo related film in the Warner Brothers franchise. I don't know if it's a reboot of the Scoob movies. It's kind of its own thing. We may share some insights in terms of our own experiences watching Scooby-Doo through the ages. We kind of have a couple different generations of Scooby-Doo we can talk about and compare and contrast with the film if we so choose. But we're going to talk Scoob totally spoiler-free for probably 10 minutes or so. Then we'll give you a fair warning before we open things up to spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, you're watching live. At that point, you can step away for 15 minutes, then come on back for plugs at the end. If you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay, you've already got a handy-dandy time index in the show notes you can skip around with at your leisure. So all of that said, Jim, Will, are you ready to hop in the mystery machine and get this thing in gear?
Yeah.
All right. I don't have any Scooby snacks, but I'm ready to go.
Well, grab a sandwich as big as your head and let's do it. Here we go. Our discussion of Scoob. All right, Eric in the live chat says you're on. Yes, Eric, we are indeed on. Okay. Unfortunately, we did have some issues with YouTube, so we're trying something a little bit different this week. Facebook, you got some big shoes to fill. Let's see if you do a good job. We'll see. But Jim, if you wouldn't mind kicking off our movie discussion this week, I think it's kind of interesting because without giving your exact age, and I promise this isn't an age crack, but you were kind of around at the dawn of Scooby-Doo. And now you're going from watching Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? As a kid to this like mega $1 million, CGI Scoob spectacular. Maybe as you're setting up the discussion, you could talk a little bit about what it's like to grow up with Scoob and its genesis and see this film. What were your thoughts? Is it worth seeing Not in theaters because theaters aren't necessarily open right now, but is this worth checking out for like a $20 rental or $25 buy? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely an impressionable preteen Saturday morning cartoon watcher when Scooby Doo, Where Are You was on TV Saturday mornings, and I was glued to those episodes. They were pretty awesome. The whole Hanna-Barbera kind of universe that was kind of exploded on TV in the 60s was kind of my life growing up. And I know that's different for you guys, especially with properties that are hitting the big screen, these call them reboots. I mean, this would normally be a big screen release. I think it's his first Scooby big screen release to hit, to hit quote unquote theaters, or would have hit theaters. Unfortunately, that's not the case now. It's hitting our TV screens at home, which is fine. But yeah, I loved Scooby Doo, Where Are You? The original series. And after that, we got several spin-offs, Scooby and Shaggy, I don't even know what all of them are called. There was a Scooby Doo puppy one, a little dog. I don't remember the name of it.
Scrappy Doo, yo.
Scrappy Doo. By then I had kind of moved on to things, but Scooby Doo, Where Are You holds a place in my heart. And this movie definitely reached that spot in my heart and scratched that for me in terms of nostalgia. So I'm just going to read the IMDb plot summary or synopsis to get us started for the movie Scoob! ! Scooby and the gang face their most challenging mystery ever, a plot to unleash the ghost dog Cerberus on the world. As they race to stop this dog-pocalypse, the gang discovers that Scooby has an epic destiny greater than anyone imagined. So we have this movie, and it's directed by this gentleman named Tony. I'm going to say it's Tony Cervone or Tony Cervone. I don't know the pronunciation, but Tony Cervone sounds super cool. So I'm going with Tony Cervone. He's done a lot of work in the Hanna-Barbera world, like a lot of work. If you look at the IMDb, produced and directed a lot of work, starting with his work early on in Spielberg's Tiny Toon Adventures, Animaniacs, probably kind of more in your generation of stuff that maybe you saw growing up. But I think he's considered kind of a guru when it comes to the Hanna-Barbera world of animation. I say it right off the bat, I really did like this movie. I have some issues with the movie itself, but I did love it. This movie, I think, does what it sets out to do, and that's to make the series feel, kind of the franchise feel renewed while keeping lots of the familiar feel and details that many of us, like me, remember from the days of the original Scooby-Doo cartoon. So it's kind of a meshing of kind of old ideas and the nostalgia stuff that hits me with new stuff, kind of a new outlook on things. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. I love the way this looked, the way it jumped off the screen visually, like the animation, really bright colors. It definitely brought home the same kind of memories I have of all the Hanna-Barbera stuff, like how it was colored and presented. Now it's not gel cell animation like those were, but it obviously it's computer generated these days. But I think they worked to keep the feel of the animation and not make it too like photoreal, like a lot of movies doing new style animations usually do. And so it doesn't have the same raggedy charm and scratchy, stuff going on that the old one did. A lot of the movie's energy is where I have a problem with the film. I think the first 20 to 30 minutes of this movie, and I'm not going to spoil anything here in this segment, is a perfect Scooby-Doo Where Are You episode. Up till a certain point, and we can talk about that when we get into spoilers. The rest of the movie kind of falls more toward the modern superhero, supervillain typical plot stuff that happens now. And to me, that didn't work as well as like that first 20 or 30 minutes. So when I rewatch it, and I will, I'm going to pay a lot more attention to that beginning part. But yeah, this definitely to me is worth either the money to rent it or buy it. If you're a rewatcher, I would say spend the extra money to buy it. If you're not, you're like me, go ahead and rent it and give it a try. For me, it's definitely worth it.
All right. Sounds like this is a big win for you, Jim. Will, how about for you?
Yeah, so I'm maybe a little more on the fence than you are, Jim, but I think there's definitely some charm here. I grew up with Scooby-Doo I grew up sort of like in the second wave of Scooby-Doo, right? For me, classic Scooby-Doo was like on Nick at Night, and Pup Named Scooby-Doo and some of the other different like spinoffs were the things that we saw kind of as part of our Saturday morning cartoons and stuff. So that's my context coming in, but I enjoyed Scooby-Doo as a property quite a bit. Maybe less so the live-action movies, but I think that they've had a pretty interesting and storied history of being able to tell kind of the same variation of the same story the same way every single episode while always still being entertaining. There's something very magical about being able to be both formula and also original at the same time. So I was very interested coming into Scoob, and I will say that I'm right there with you. I think the very beginning of this film, the first 10 minutes are its strongest points because it's what sets the stage. It builds the relationships. It has some cool little moments that I think anyone who's ever had either a close friendship or like a human animal relationship, like a beloved pet, that type of thing, will be able to relate super strongly to this kind of this opening story. It reminds me a little bit of Up, not fully, but just in the fact that you have this like wonderful little moment that sort of like sets the stage at the beginning of the movie. After that, though, it turns into a different movie, and it feels a lot like they took some of the greatest hits, not just from Scooby-Doo, but from the related cartoons, put them in the blender, and this is what we got. There are a lot of nostalgic call-outs, which I think are going to play very, very well with people who have watched these different shows over the years. I do wonder how well some of those moments or some of those characters will land for people that are, kind of under the age of, 20 or so, like who don't have that same level of experience with the properties. Not to say that the characters aren't fun cartoon characters that a kid would like, but I do think that there's a different level that comes with like, oh yeah, that's that person who I also saw in this other thing. Oh, how cool. I found some of the voice acting a little jarring to get used to. Not necessarily bad, but, Scooby-Doo is one of those franchises that for the longest time used the same voice actors, and of course they aged up and out. And then for the longest time afterwards, we've had another set of voice actors, and there was a bit of a dust up. Some of the voice actors who'd been doing all of including like the cartoons that are like currently airing and have been doing these characters for the last 20, 30 years, were just not asked to do this movie. And so these voice actors who have been doing these voices for, maybe twice as long as the target audience's age, there were some like Twitter posts where they're just like, we hope the movie does well, but kind of wish it would have been nice to have at least been asked or been involved in some way. And I get that, it's when you've been doing something for that long. I don't know. It's a fine movie. It didn't quite have like the emotional feels or the emotional pull or even kind of like the narrative strength of like the closest thing I would have to compare it to, which would be Onward, which is the other big animated movie that came out during coronavirus quarantine. I don't think it necessarily has to. It's Scooby-Doo after all. And if they completely reinvented the formula from scratch, it wouldn't be Scooby-Doo. It would be something completely different. And I think that it wouldn't be true to its roots. So this is a fine enough watch. I think that it does what it does well, even though it has some of its missteps throughout the film. And we'll talk about those. I think that there's still some joy to be had.
All right. Brad, I want to hear what you thought.
Yeah, sounds like well, you were maybe a little more middle of the road than Jim was. Jim, sounds like you were pretty favorable
Mhm.
overall.
Yeah,
Um, I think
solidly.
for I think for me, I probably end up on the further side of loving this movie. But I say that with a caveat. Jim, you made a comment earlier, and of course we'll get into spoilers here very shortly. But you made a comment earlier that this is like the perfect episode of Scooby Doo, Where Are You? Until about halfway through the film, and then it kind of becomes like, a superhero movie,
Yeah,
basically. I mean, there's a freaking superhero in this movie, so I think that's fair to say that it becomes a superhero movie fairly,
yeah.
quickly at some point.
Yeah.
Roll eyes.
Yeah. So I guess what I would say here is, man, I really want to see a Scooby Doo movie that is just Scooby and the gang on their own, doing their own thing, solving mysteries without the superhero element. Because I felt like the superhero element with Blue Falcon, and as much as I love Dynamite, and as cool as Dynamite is, like I wanted Scooby Doo. I didn't want a different dog, unless it's Scrappy Doo, but that would be, too
Mhm.
much for us to ask for. So I'm gonna say I really, really, really loved the beginning and the setup for this movie. I didn't really love the superhero components of this film. It just really detracted a lot for me. So, overall, love the film. It was really funny, lots of heart. But the second half of the movie, when it kind of becomes a superhero action, whatever, I just kind of tuned out. I found myself picking up my phone and reading Facebook, and in a normal movie theater, I'm not a monster. I wouldn't do that, but watching it on the couch, it's kind of unavoidable. So, definitely a love letter. Scoob
Oh yeah.
is to the Scooby Doo franchise. I don't think it's a spoiler to say this because parts of it are in the trailer. They took the original theme and they did some cool things, like recreating some of the moments from the opening credits of the 1969 show, which
Yeah.
just
Which is
delighted me
awesome.
to no end. Yeah, like give me more of that and less. Eric in the chat, Hamstract, he goes by, says, which superhero? It's Blue Falcon and Dynamite. Is the superhero duo in this film, along with there's a cavalcade of other folks in here. We could probably just go through all the cast at some point for 20 minutes. There's a lot of great voices and a lot of great people involved in this, but yeah, I mean, I'm on the further side of loving this film, but Jim, I think it's completely fair to say that this film kind of gives you superhero fatigue if you're already fatigued with superhero
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah, and
Snyder cut.
it felt like it almost felt like the writers got together and said, "Hey, superhero movies do so well. We gotta make a superhero. We got to make this movie a superhero movie, or else people aren't going to want to see it. They don't want to see that old mystery stuff, being solved. I don't think they have the patience for that. They want to see a superhero, and they want to see whiz bang tech stuff and action set pieces and so forth. And we got all that. That's fine. And there's probably a huge audience for that. It's just, to me, who probably would have been satisfied with a little bit deeper mystery. And we'll get into more in spoilers, but I don't think when it went that way for me, I was almost on the verge of like getting a little bit irritated with the movie because you didn't have to go down this road. And like, what happened to Scooby and Shaggy and the gang? Like, come on.
Yeah, well, and the thing too is that if you're going to do these types of things, because this movie is all about sort of like nostalgic callbacks, combining all these other characters from these other properties and turning the story into something new, I think that you can still use some of those elements. You can still do the superheroes that are here and have some of that element. You can still have the villain that was here and do some of that. Like, I'm not saying scrap those things entirely, but they did steer away from there's a mystery, there's someone trying to do a thing, doing the unmasking, like all of that stuff, in a pretty startling way. And again, you could still do this. There's some characters in here that you could probably cut to make more room for that. I love her to death, but there is Kiersey Clemons is just one of those actresses who I love seeing in things. She played a character in this named Dee Dee, who I kept forgetting kind of what her purpose was because they didn't give her anything to do.
Yeah.
Exposition. She gives exposition.
Fair, very fair.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it good, though.
It doesn't make it good. Especially when you do have other characters there that could have also provided the exact same thing. I think that they were setting up a sort of like a foil type situation between two characters, but the third character didn't fit into that formula, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I think we've kind of given a good summary of our thoughts. I mean, honestly, as you know, as much as we like to talk about movies, and we love it when you folks tune in to talk movies with us, we're big fans of people seeing films and making their own choices, right, as to whether they think it's good or it's worth watching, or so we don't want to say for you whether or not you have to see this movie, but it sounds like the three of us still had some pretty favorable things that we liked and enjoyed. And in this day of COVID movies at home, this might be a fun one for you to check out. We had a little bit of a quandary because we had to decide whether to buy the movie for $25 or rent it for $20 because of this whole COVID, studio rental own whatever thing. And we ended up just buying the movie. I did not regret spending that extra $5 on the. One thing I wanted to call out,
because I'll go back and watch. I'm not a rewatcher, but I do want to go back and watch like that first 30 minutes of the movie and get that joy again.
Yeah, I totally would. The only reason I mention this is I have a friend from high school when we talked about Trolls World Tour a few weeks ago. Her family had rented that movie 6 times. 6 times. Because her kids kept wanting to watch that movie at $20 a pop. So she was super excited that she had the option to just buy this from the get-go. She knew her kids were going to love it. She paid the $25, and they watched it 11 and a half times at this point since the movie became available late last week. So I think it's awesome. COVID be damned, this whole mess that's going on. I do think it's cool that these films are kind of changing the landscape a little bit. And, parents don't have to spend $80 to go take their kids out to the movies to see a film like this. Now $20 to $25 brings it in reach.
And what's kind of exciting about that? We talked about kind of like the big numbers on the scoreboard with Onward, and that was exciting. I was able to watch this with my kids, 43 times, however many times it ended up being, and probably more. And the thing about it is the conversations that you then have with your kid after watching something like that are about the content of the film, right? Like the relationships and those types of things. When you have something like this, the conversations that you'd be able to have with your kid, of course, are going to be about the content of the film, but also it opens up this whole lore. When I was a kid, I watched Scooby-Doo too, but when I watched Scooby-Doo, it was like this, and then there's also this other Scooby-Doo, and there's another Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network right now. So it almost feels like this could be sort of like a gateway drug for a parent to like introduce their child to this thing that was a beloved part of their own childhood.
Yeah, until they go back and watch the first ones. Mom, where's the superhero show up? I don't see any superheroes in Scooby-Doo.
Well, to be fair, because I loved Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? In fact, you can buy all 3 seasons of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You right now for $20, believe it or not, on some of the different platforms. We bought it on iTunes. I say we because we have a collective library of things we share, babes. It's there if you want to watch it. But there were some very famous crossovers with Burt Ward and Adam West's Batman and Robin from the 1960s show. They voiced their characters on Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? We also had some fun crossovers. Dynamite did come in and play a role in Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Some quick cameos. So if kids were to watch it and they're like, where's the superhero? Well, they're coming. That will be a thing eventually.
Later.
But it's a very, very, very small part of the Scooby-Doo franchise. So to make the superhero element such a big part of this film, feels a little weird to me. But it was still fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, listen, we want to talk spoilers for this movie for probably about 15 minutes, then we're going to kind of wrap things up here. So if you haven't seen Scoob yet and you don't want to be spoiled, now is your chance. Step away, walk away, do what you got to do to keep yourself from being spoiled. But we're going to go ahead and get those rocking and rolling here. So, awkward rambling is over. Jim, Will, where do you want to start with spoilers?
Well, I had talked about how I thought the first part of the movie was great, and it seemed to be very front loaded with things that really delighted me. Just in the first 30 minutes of the movie, you get a voice cameo from Ira Glass, which I thought was hilarious. For people who listen to podcasts, and understand that, Ira Glass and his, This American Life show. I thought that was great. I loved the little origin story between a young Shaggy and meeting, puppy Scooby on the beach at Venice Beach. I just love that whole sequence. And then how Scooby and Shaggy met the rest of the gang. And not only that, so there's an origin story there that goes about 10 minutes. Then they launch into an actual haunted house mystery, where they have to go to the Rigby house on Halloween and unmask, what the heck is going on at the Rigby house. And that's where I think you get the kind of the redone opening theme sequence. Up to that point, I was like, oh my God, this is the best movie ever. This is really going great. And then a little bit later on, they go bowling and, mechanical scorpions show up, and to me, it's kind of started to go off the rails at that point. But just so much great stuff in there. Did you guys like any of that stuff? Like at the beginning, I thought it was just really well set up.
Oh, I thought that was wonderful. Man, the only thing that they could have done that would have made it more Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Would be to add in the laugh track while they're walking around and looking for things.
Right, the old laugh track that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was watching the first couple episodes yesterday and today, and they always had that laugh track going. And I had mixed feelings about it, because I'm kind of like, ugh, I hate laugh tracks. But I'm like, oh, but it really works because it's Scooby-Doo.
It's like comedy training wheels.
Yeah, I think that would have been weird to put in a movie, so I can see probably why they left that out. But otherwise, in all respects, I mean, that was just such a phenomenal love letter. As soon as I saw that first ghost had the same freaking facial details, and I was just in love with that whole sequence. It was wonderful.
I'm right there with you guys, because there's sort of those three elements of the beginning of this film absolutely do it for me. They send me, as the kids would say.
Mm-hmm. Is that what they say?
Yeah, that's what they say. The sort of the boy and his dog first part of it. I mean, that hits you. That hits you. As a pet owner, just that relationship is real, and I loved it. Then you, of course, like you said, the mystery feels very classic Scooby-Doo, or even Pup Named Scooby-Doo, because it's the kids, but it felt exactly right. And then that montage was pitch perfect in nailing everything. And even the scene right after all of that, I'm still in on. Because then after all of those moments, we then have a celebrity cameo, which in the moment I was starting to get annoyed by, because we're in spoilers. Simon Cowell shows up and plays Simon Cowell in a scene. And at first I'm just like, this is stupid. Why would they do it? And then my classic Scooby-Doo, that's that's where you have Gilligan would show up, or Don Rickles shows up, or something like that. The Simon Cowell was the throwback reference to all of those things. So as soon as my brain made that connection, I was able to really roll with it. And Simon Cowell is probably the perfect tier of celebrity for that type of cameo when it comes to the kind of the Scooby-Doo cameo. Not that
Isn't he so 6 years ago now, though? At this point,
he's still he's one of the main judges on America's Got Talent. So he's still in the zeitgeist, and I think that's great, because that's what those guest stars were. They were people that were sort of in the zeitgeist, but from like network television usually. Like it was like the network television like crossover type thing. So I liked that. Even if I didn't really care for Simon Cowell specifically or even the role, I liked that they got that caliber of celebrity to do that cameo.
And I really liked also like how the comedy that they put into this actually worked. Like if I compare it to another animated feature, Trolls World Tour, Trolls that we saw, it's a lot of comedy that they try to put into Trolls World Tour and Trolls that just didn't really seem to work. But a lot of the stuff they put in the front of this, at least in the front of this movie, and pretty much all the way throughout, generally worked. Not everything landed, but a lot of it did. It's just an example of like, you know, he's a lonely kid and he's on the beach and he's going through the radio and it's like different radio stations from different eras of music and they're all like lonely songs. And I thought that was hilarious.
Show me the meaning of being lonely.
Right. And so I thought that was great. And like I said, I think the comedy most of the way throughout worked. I wish we had gotten a little bit more of some of the other gang characters to do. Granted, like Velma did her smart chick thing on the computer. You know, Fred did his kind of dumb blonde. It totally gave me Onward flashbacks, like the guy, the kind of like the doofus guy, the good-hearted but doofus guy that's in love with his inanimate, van. So. Yeah, I think most of that did work, but I wish, like I said, I think if they had kind of maybe done something different other than the superhero flashy stuff, we could have got more of an insight story to those characters.
And that's just it for me. Like, we have that beautiful setup, right? The gang all comes together. We get their origin story. Then they're older, and we have this thing in the bowling alley, and it feels like it's this setup, right, for the gang, like, oh, they got to figure out what happened to Shaggy and Scooby, and they're going to catch up for them real quick, and then they'll solve for the problem from there. But instead, we get this weird sidestep into superhero land, and like, I wanted to get to know this universe's Daphne. I wanted to get to know this universe's Fred and Velma, and we just really didn't get much of that at all. And in fact, this movie goes so far out of its way to break the gang up that they literally break Scooby and Shaggy up. They're not together for a large part of this movie. Shaggy's just on the ship and he's like, oh, I guess I should have gone. Zoinks. And, they find the true meaning of their friendship. That's great. They already had a collaring, moment, which was really beautiful early in the film. And I feel like it undercuts that, a lot. I see what they were trying to do, but I think the strength of a Scooby-Doo story is the gang doing their thing. And I guess at the end, we kind of get that. But it was a long road getting there. And it was a rough ride at some points.
Like, zoinks. I missed the guest of the gang. Yeah, I really did. Like, and you can do this for a little bit. The story is about Shaggy and Scooby figuring out what they contribute to the team. You can keep all of that. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to figure out how they fit with one another when they also have these other things that are pulling them different directions. You can also still do that. You can still do Blue Falcon Dynamite. You can still do all of that stuff, but you have to get the gang back together earlier, because what I missed the most, I feel like even with some of the splits and stuff, I felt like I got a good read on who Shaggy and Scooby were and what they meant to each other and how they interacted with one another. But yeah, and I felt like I got a good vibe on how like Fred, Daphne, and Velma interacted with one another. But I got very little of those two separate groups interacting with one another, because once they all meet up again, it's in the climax and it's time to fight and all of that type of stuff. You can do a lot of the same beats. You can still have Captain Caveman come out and do some fighting. You can still have the new version of Blue Falcon having daddy issues and Dynamite trying to figure out how to. You can do all of those same things. Also, you recast Dynamite as someone other than Ken Jeong, because that was very jarring for me. But that's an aside. But you can still do all of those same story beats, but you have to get everyone back together. Yeah. Wait,
Will, are you saying you were jonging for someone else in that role?
I absolutely was jonging for someone else, and part of it's because as much as I love Ken Jeong on Community, we watch The Masked Singer here, unashamedly, we watch it, and
welcome to The Masked Singer.
And every time Ken Jeong stands up, I look over at Scott and go, "Oh, here we fucking go." And like he's like, "It's okay, William." No, he's gonna do the thing.
You and everybody else.
Yeah. So but hold aside. I think you needed to get those characters back together earlier. If you split them up, you do it for like 15, 20 minutes of the movie max, and then you pull them back together so that they can do the final adventure and mystery solving together.
Yeah, I think with a little story work, this could be a really special, movie franchise if they get another shot at it. I really think it could be. Will, you talked about Ken Jeong not being your favorite Dynamite. It was funny because we were watching the show, and of course we talked about this before. We try to figure out, without looking at the IMDb before the movie, we try to figure out like who's doing what voices, and it's always fun to do that. And I actually thought Dynamite was being voiced by what's his name, Patton Oswalt for a while. I'm like, that sounds like Patton Oswalt, and then Brad's like, "Oh no, that's Ken Jeong." I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I thought Dynamite was fine. I thought the voice he did was fine, and I know your biases, Will, from The Masked Singer, because we watched The Masked Singer too, so we get it. But a couple of other interesting things about voice work in this movie. Will, you brought it up earlier that some of the originals were not brought back on or not asked to come back on, but Frank Welker, who voices Scooby Doo in this movie, he was Fred. He was Fred in the original Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? He voiced Fred. So that's interesting that he got to do two different characters. Of course, Casey Kasem is not around anymore as a Shaggy. So right. I thought Will Forte did a fine job as Shaggy. A little bit different, but that's okay. And then Don Messick, who did Scooby-Doo originally and also did Muttley, and he's not with us anymore, unfortunately. But he was mentioned in the movie. There was a moment where they had Messick Mountain or Mount Messick or something like that. And that was a total homage to Don Messick, who voiced the original Scooby-Doo. But I was delighted when they brought back his voice from recordings to do Muttley in the movie. I thought that was really great. So just some really cool little Easter eggs scattered throughout this movie, which if you're someone who really delights in that stuff, and I do like it when it's well done, this movie has a lot of that.
Frank Welker, he is so talented. Eric in the chat says he voices everything. It just blows me away that the guy who voiced Megatron from Transformers now is voicing Scooby-Doo. Like that just it blows my mind. But Will, you were talking about like the Scooby Shaggy like friendship dynamic, and it makes me want to see a Scooby and Shaggy and Steven and Lion team up short.
Yeah, I would watch that. And there's there's fertile ground for it. Another character that I really liked in this that I thought did work super well, probably the best of the reference characters, was I loved their use of Dick Dastardly as the villain. I loved like the old like Wacky Racers and like what was the Space Racers, whatever that one was. And I loved Dick Dastardly and Muttley, and I love that we got to see those characters here. I felt like their inclusion, once you're doing like the story that they're doing, using this as the villain is an inspired choice, because not only is it like a fun reference and callback, but also there is a storyline about a man and his dog that's playing as sort of a mirror to a story about a man and his dog. And I thought that both of those stories were good. Like, to me, like, I know some people like were like, I got to break out the tissues at this movie. And that really didn't hit me. But the closest I came to it was when Dick Dastardly was talking about some of the stuff that had gone on with Muttley. Like when he was just like, I miss that, that flatulent flea bag. Like you could tell, like there's a relation between them. And that's fucking Dick Dastardly. I shouldn't feel that way about the Wacky Racers guy, but I did. That was one of the more inspired moments for me.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Dick Dastardly because he was voiced by Jason Isaacs, and
Love
Jim
Jason Isaacs.
earlier that we were watching, we were trying to figure out the voices. I knew that voice pretty much instantly. We were at a Star Trek convention in Las Vegas over the summer, and we actually got a chance to meet Jason Isaacs and get a photo with him. And he was like doing fun voices on stage. And one of the voices he was doing, because I'm sure he'd already recorded for Scooby Doo, was his Dick Dastardly voice. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Jason Isaacs. And if you're unfamiliar with some of Jason's other work, if anyone's a fan of Star Trek Discovery, he played Captain Lorca on the first season of that show. If you watched a really terrible show on Netflix called The OA, he was a villain the first season of that. I mean, he's done a ton of stuff, and he was great in it. My favorite Dick Dastardly moment, though, I got to call this out, is when he's like, "My name is Dick.
There were some things in this movie that really pushed the line for like an animated kids movie, right? There was a few jokes. There was the dick jokes, right? Dick. And not only that, but then there was like, "I'm not your Falcon superhero." And do you remember those titles? Right? Like,
yeah,
not Falcon around.
I'm not Falcon around. That Dick line, I turned over to my partner Scott during that exact moment and said, like, okay, well, that is a gifable moment, if anything, from this movie. Just a man screaming Dick into the heaven. Which, to be fair, we've all been there.
I mean, some of us are there right now during COVID. It's like, who's using Growler anymore? Not like you do it.
Oh boy.
In any event, there was a lot here that we really enjoyed. I think my last favorite moment that I want to talk about, I know we've got a wrap here, but there's a moment where Velma, Daphne, and Fred are lamenting the fact that Scooby and Shaggy are gone. And they say, "Oh man, if Scooby and Shaggy were here right now, they'd like trip over their chair and find a secret entrance, or like find the key that we're looking for because they're clowning around." And that moment of them like realizing Scooby and Shaggy's worth in comparison to the earlier scene with Simon Cowell, where he's like, "Well, the three of you are awesome. I want to hire you to solve mysteries, but Scooby and Shaggy, you bring nothing, go away." I thought was a really, really cool, heartfelt moment.
Agreed. Like, I think that with any group of people, there's always that need to feel like validated and that you carry worth and you carry weight within the group, and you see that with, we see it in real life, of course, with any of our friendships. We always want to feel that we're contributing. And you also see it in like famous, like cartoon and television, like groups, each one of the Ninja Turtles had its role. Everyone has their role. And when your job is to be the comedy relief, it sometimes can feel like, well, when things get really serious, who am I? Think about characters like Xander from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or even someone like from Lars from Steven Universe. There's a lot of these characters in these shows that have to go through these like little like trial arcs where they figure out like, well, what am I after the jokes? And I love that they really double around this one and figure out that like, okay, yeah, you've got the muscle, you've got the charm, you've got the brains, but you also need to have someone who's like kind of the heart, the person pulling everything together. And that's who Shaggy and Scooby are to this group.
Yeah.
You need your...
I'm glad it came around to that. All right, Brad. Good.
Yeah. No, you go ahead. I think we're probably going to say the same thing, so go for it.
Yeah, no, I was just glad it came around to that. I think that and the Dick, as you said, Will, the Dick Dastardly Muttley moment was really heartfelt, and it was odd how much I felt for those moments more than the Shaggy Scooby kind of reunion. You know what I mean? At the end, but yeah, I don't think this movie is going for that Pixar level of emotional resonance. So I'm not gonna. I certainly won't knock this movie for kind of falling short in that regard. I don't look for every animated movie to make me cry.
Yeah, they don't all have to be tearjerkers, but when they are in a sincere way. I mean, it certainly won't complain. I like to cry in movies. But yeah, I mean, this one's a lot of fun. Hamstracked in the chat says, I love dick jokes and puns, by the way. You guys are really selling me on this movie. Gosh, even if you kind of get spoiled in the plot a little bit, if you stuck around for spoilers, I would say this is still probably worth checking out. If you love Scooby-Doo as much as we do, do it. It's worth it. Even superhero stuff aside, it's a good ride. Also, it can kind of maybe re-spark your love for going back and checking out some of the older series. Jim, you mentioned Hanna-Barbera. They had this beautiful tribute in the credits.
Yeah.
Hanna-Barbera cartoons. We see Velma using a laptop that has the Quest Q on it. We saw Dr. Quest show up, Grape Ape, Jabberjaw. I mean, all these
Rosie.
Yeah, Rosie the Robot, right? All these different beloved Hanna-Barbera properties popping up. So I was just looking through things that were available to buy on streaming platforms right now, and Jim, we watched Dr. Quest a couple weeks ago. Not Dr. Quest, Johnny Quest. A couple weeks ago, the first episode when we were just kind of looking through stuff, but like the whole Hanna-Barbera library pretty much is available. For the most part, a lot of these cartoons are back, and I mean, the entirety of the series are available for like $20 or less in a lot of cases. So, if this kind of re-sparks your love of those, and we're in quarantine, now's a great time to go back and feel your Hanna-Barbera oats.
Yeah, and they do them all with justice, whether it be the characters that are there for a significant part of the story, or even the ones that are just there as a quick reference. Like each one of them feels welcome in some way or another. There's an arcade cabinet at one point in the background of a room that they're in, and it's for the space racers, and it's just like, oh, okay, it's like they're referencing the show. I think all of that was really well done, and it not overwhelming. The references that were like part of the story were part of the story. The ones that were Easter eggs, and I felt like there was kind of a good volume of both.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the Johnny Quest, big screen movie to come out. Johnny Quest, My Two Dads on an Adventure, that kind of stuff. That would be really cool, but I don't know if we'll ever get it.
Johnny, how about you and Haji go off on an adventure while your dad and I stay here to do some research? Sure, Race Bannon, research.
That's right. We could have a homoerotic version of Johnny Quest, unlike all of the other versions of Johnny Quest.
I think it's time to go practice our karate shirtless on the beach again, Johnny.
Whoa, that's danger territory right there.
Yeah,
I'm on board for Dr. Quest and Race Bannon.
Yeah. We're talking Dr. Quest and Race Bannon. Yeah.
Pedal back.
Interesting question from Eric. How much screen time does Captain Caveman get? A whole damn scene. Like he is, I would say maybe 10 minutes on screen, somewhere in that ballpark.
Tracy Morgan voices him. That was an interesting choice to voice Captain Caveman. I was a little like, but he got the Captain Caveman yell in there. I was impressed. He did a good job.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Mm-hmm. I don't even remember Captain Caveman's, the original voice. I'll have to go look that up.
Captain
Caveman. I remember the yell. Like the rest of the voice, I don't know, but the yell is all of it. Because
also don't forget Unga Boonga Unga.
And I also remember, gosh, and now floodgates are opening up. I remember as a kid, not only was there a pup named Scooby-Doo, but there was also the, gosh, I forget what it was even called, but it was a
Ghosts of Scooby-Doo.
Well, there was a cartoon that had like Captain Caveman and his kid, and they were doing. And I don't remember much about it, but I just remember that it. Gosh, man, like the memory doors are opening up, and for all these shows as a kid.
That was the one where his club was magical and gave him the ability to fly.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, because back in the 80s, like magical swords, magical clubs, magical shields, totally a thing. Like,
is that Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels? Maybe, I don't know. As if that's it.
Coming to you this weekend, the Saturday Morning Cartoon Bears podcast.
I'm so on board for that.
I'm sure there's already a Hanna-Barbera podcast somewhere.
Well, I've been like binge watching Galtar and the Golden Lance, which is a Hanna-Barbera property, and I found Thundar the Barbarian today, and I'm so excited to crack into Thundar. I don't know if you ever watched Thundar.
I did watch Thundar and the Thundar the Barbarian and all. What were the little monsters he had with him?
No.
Oh wait, never mind. I'm thinking of Herculoids.
You're thinking of Herculoids.
Yeah. But no. Thundar too. It's interesting. Last night, sort of related, I went through a long YouTube rabbit hole of my own, like watching like old cartoons from my like super far back, like it's Silverhawks and Bionic 6 and Today's Special, which wasn't a cartoon, it was just a kid's show, but just like, I don't know, there's something fun right now about like, and bringing it back to Scooby-Doo, like there's something that feels like kind of like weird and uncertain about the world right now, like, and so there's something that feels very comforting about being able to like kind of, I don't know, reacquaint yourself with these things that, at least for me, like I had a good childhood. And so for me personally, I'm able to sort of like retreat back into those and get a little bit of that feeling of like safety and warmth.
Yes. Yeah, I saw your post last night, and Randy had called out Silverhawks. That's one of my favorite shows, and immediately the theme just like came back to my head, and I just felt so good, like partly metal, partly real, like God,
sing it, bro.
I get passionate about these things. I mean, if you look behind me, I've got fucking Voltron, Power Rangers. I don't even know what way to point. He-Man, Thundercats. I mean, it's no secret that I like old school cartoons. And Scooby-Doo, I tip my hat to you, because without you, we wouldn't have had this great movie that we had a lot of fun watching. That's me bringing it back on topic, guys. So I'm curious to see if we'll get another Scooby-Doo film with this cast, as part of a new franchise. This is a Scooby-Doo reboot. Maybe we'll see. Also, I'm wondering if we'll get some other Hanna-Barbera properties if this film does well, especially with this direct-to-rental own platform. Who knows what we could end up seeing? But I'm excited to find out.
Might see Barney and Fred smoking out behind the house again. Smoking Camels.
Oh, my God. Oh, yeah. The fact that they used to smoke on a kid's cartoon. Well, Flintstones wasn't really a kid's cartoon, though. Was it? Like it aired at night in prime time.
Well, it wasn't when the
whole family would watch.
The whole family would watch it, but it was designed to be like an analog to like the Honeymooners or something like that.
Right.
So you could, it wasn't like, I think later we had cartoons that were geared towards kids, but this was much more towards family, and you could market it different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. All right. Well, we're going to figure out what we're doing next week, but between now and then, if folks want to chat movies or really anything, I suppose, let's let folks know where they can find us outside of Facebook Live. Jim, where can folks interface with you?
I don't know. Can I say this on Facebook? You can interface with me on Twitter at JJP Out West. Those are my initials, JJP and the two words Out West all together. Talk with me about movies on there. Tweet at me. Read my tweets. Like my tweets. Smash that like button.
No.
And find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico. I'm happy to talk to anybody about movies or anything else.
All right, excellent. Will, how about you?
Jim, I just went to your social feed and the like button was smashed.
There is no like button to smash.
I don't like it anymore. So if you wanna chat with me about movies or about anything really, you can find me on Twitter. My handle there is @whatevercove. You can find me on Facebook. Just look for William Lindis. Send me a message first so that I know who you are. You can see the things that I write about movies on letterboxd.com. Also look for William Lindis because that's my name there as well.
All right, excellent. And you can find me on Facebook under Brad Harris. I'm the one that likely has Bear Chub Chaser friends in common with you. Send me a message first. You can also find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at iBradPro. Feel free, reach out, say hi. I don't bite unless you like biting. And we'll see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.